And welcome back to Superstat, the podcast where we break down the silos, decode the trends, and dig into what's really driving our laboratory world. We're your hosts. I'm Aaron.
Stephanie.
I'm Melody.
And we want to thank you for being here. Whether you're tuning in from the gym, which is usually where I'm tuning in from, you're on your commute, or you're on the comfort of your couch.
That's right. In today's episode, we're going to sound a little different. We're taking a slight detour from our normal deep dive into the LabCares framework, but we want to introduce you to something new that we're trying, and it's called Shifts and Trends.
Yes. Think of shifts and trends as like a temperature read, a moment to pause, look around, take stock of what's bubbling up, like a 1-2s, right? In the social media field, group chats, comment sections, and online spaces that shape so much of our collective thinking nowadays.
Yeah, and like you, we're noticing conversations, trends, and even outrageous cycles happening in real time. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed, misled, or just plain exhausted by it all.
So in these Shifts and Trends episodes, we're going to surface some of the most recent chatter in social media, reflect on how it connects to the bigger theme of laboratory medicine and healthcare, and share some grounded thoughts from us on what we think it really means, especially to you all and the rest of our community.
Right. We'll also talk about what we as the laboratory community can do with this information that's all over and all around us, and how we can stay grounded and respond with clarity, and how we can move forward with intention. So let's get to it.
This week, one of the big waves we saw across platforms is the culmination of Nurses Week and at the heels of Lab Week. And there were a few posts that were made regarding Nurse Blake's Instagram and the KCFPD Station 10 campaign. So Melody will kind of dive into that a little bit. That highlights the advocacy needed in the space of care team safety. So you probably saw that. Maybe you reposted, maybe you felt a certain way about it, maybe you rolled your eyes and kind of kept moving. Sometimes you'll see me in text chains about some of these things with some of my lab friends that you guys are kind of talking about.
Yeah, there were definitely some eye rolls on our part at Nurse Blake and Tiff Marie. If anyone knows how to say her name correctly, please correct me. About the age-old conflict of Lab Week versus Nurses Week. Specifically, I think because of Nurse Blake's interview with Dr. Mike, where he discussed the toxic nature of healthcare. With Tiff, no one loves feeling like they've been flipped off. And I know Melody did a react video to Blake's recent post about hemolyzed specimens. But I'm going to ask you all overall, what do you think about the misinformation about our profession in the laboratory medicine field across these large social media platforms?
Lab Week, about 4 weeks ago, I think, Blake's post came out, but the chatter around it was and still is quite heated. I'm not sure when Tiff Marie's, I also don't know how to say her name right, came out, but I think while it's common for us in healthcare to kind of poke fun at each other, and there is that dark humor that comes with the stress of the job, I think, like just between ourselves, like on the shift, right? So, but I do think whether it's between specialties, roles, or teams, like we also have to remember that beneath the jokes, we do have real disparities in how people are treated and valued around the hospital. And not everyone in the system experiences the same respect or even recognition or support. And so while we kind of laugh and build camaraderie amongst ourselves at times, I think we do have to stay mindful of like the deeper dynamics and commit to creating a culture where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
Yeah, I mean, there's a line between humor and I don't know, angry humor. So one of the comments I saw said that if like a nurse calls down, it'd be hilarious to say back, hemolyze these nuts. So a little too far maybe. Or some others that were asking about like what hospital employs him and taking it even further for that lab and getting him in trouble. But when it's the intention's not, I don't think his intention's terrible or bad. It's just you have to think about people are valued, and we all do play a part in the patient. So even though it's in good fun, it can go a little too far sometimes.
Yeah, it's sad because that's a little bit of our culture now, right? That's what most people in social media, especially on different platforms, respond to, right? It's this really dark sarcasm that gets clicks. I guess they call it clickbait. I'm old school. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, and like I said, I think it's sad because many people are even claiming that they've gotten blocked on the social medias because of this, which is actually just really a lost opportunity for us to stretch across the gaps. Sometimes we come in too hot, but when we respond to joking with not joking criticism or disagreement with hostility or defensiveness, we actually lose um, momentum as a healthcare group, as a healthcare society, to look at the larger issue of things. Even if our intentions are valid, a combative tone or a sarcastic tone can alienate our allies and shut down dialogues that desperately need to happen, especially right now in healthcare, and shift the focus away from our core issues, like Melanie just talked about, that we really need to address. So we all know that passion is important, but so is strategy, and so is staying open and clear, and just being grounded individuals in what we do helps us build credibility and invite collaborations, and helps us just to push all of our, common themes forward.
Yeah, and I think too, we it's hard not to feel like they're misrepresenting the facts of like what we do instead of just asking an expert. And I think it hits on some of that feeling like you're not invited to the table, right? And so if
Mhm.
you don't have a table, you should, if you're not at the table, build a table or pull up a chair, right? We have
Yeah.
to like insert ourselves often in the conversations. And so, I mean, how do you guys feel about it's just in general? Because I know you guys have done some React videos too on different things and like even Hollywood, right? And how they portray lab. Like, do you think there's a danger in portraying lab incorrectly across these platforms or harm to that?
Well, I definitely think, especially in our society today, there is a place for dramatization and there is a place for us to all be entertained, but there's also room for truth telling in that. Um, you know, for our listeners, the three of us are pretty good friends and we've got a pretty strong group chat that goes on. And I actually was texting the group chat the other day and I was watching a really popular TV show that I'll probably do a react video on. And the doctors walked out of a C. diff patient's room without gown and glove and without washing their hands. And so, that's not just lab, that's infection control, that's patient safety, that's a culture of safety in the hospital. And so I think there is definitely room for truth telling so that patients, when they go to these environments, they don't have a distorted view of how things should go, because television, social media, all these platforms are powerful tools to help patients actually realize what actually should be happening in a healthcare system. So when, unfortunately, if you're ever in that situation, you have kind of like a background of what would be happening and it's not foreign to you.
I mean, it does help too, that and to have that familiarity a little bit when you're in a scary situation of being in a hospital to go, okay, that's what I saw on TV, or that's not
Yeah.
accurate to what I saw. And I'm sure in the C. diff situation, I have friends that are infection prevention nurses that were probably cringing just as much. My quality nurse friends were probably cringing just as much and like, no, no, contact precautions.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some room in there for some a little more accuracy, and just watching like old episodes of House. Okay, so for you young viewers out there, House was this show with this angry doctor a couple years ago, back in the day. But watching some of them where they were would hold up the microscope and just be like, oh, look real quick and be like, oh, I know it's tuberculosis. And you're like, no, that's not how it's done. This is not right. But it kind of simplifies what we do. And I know they only have so much time to get to the end of the case, but at the same time, there's a better way to kind of do that so people know kind of more what to expect. So we're not having more of those conversations where, like with people explaining their labs and be like, no, well, actually, because your insurance doesn't take this, it has to go here, or the assay that actually does do the test does take about 4 to 5 hours, and then you have to reflex testing. And they're like, well, that's not what was on NCIS or something. So
Right, where the results
another,
come back like the
yeah.
same day, you know,
Yes.
like you get
And then
molecular
that's all
DNA
the
results.
testing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, no.
But you brought that up. I just watched this. It was a hilarious clip, and I need to get his name, and I'll drop it in the chat or whatever, like after this podcast. But like, there's this doc, and he does these videos, funny clinic videos, and he was talking about how like the lab is in the clinic building, but it's not associated with the insurance, you know, and like trying to explain that because it's an out of network laboratory, even though it's in the building, and like how like weird that is, you know. But it was in good taste. I mean, he wasn't like making fun of lab or anything, but it was just funny because there's just a lot of our world is funny, just in general, right? In healthcare, like if you didn't laugh, you just like cry in a corner or something, you know?
No, and we'll do like a courtesy draw, but then with the rest of their insurance, it's sent to a larger reference lab. So explain to some older people, well, we can draw your blood, and there's that lab over there. But however, due to other reasons, we have insurance, we have to send it down south to Tampa or somewhere across the country. So it's just, it's funny the way things work out.
Yeah, I think healthcare and guidelines and insurance and all these things are only getting more complicated. And so even more reason why there to be a correct depiction to just give, like Aaron said, that familiarity with patients on what to expect when they get in the hospital. And then just the totality of all of the individuals that the team that it truly takes to take care of them. And maybe that's on us, you know. Drop a comment if you'd like to see the three of us produce a reality show. You know what I mean? Like the sky's the limit for Superstat. You know what I mean? Like right now it's a podcast. In the future, it could be a reality show where we are out here like giving real depictions and interviewing real people and putting us on Hollywood stage. I'm not gonna.
I was trying to
not
get
gonna limit
the
us.
intro music. In a world that needs a laboratory, Stephanie and Melody are there.
Yes.
Superstat.
I think it is good though to have a positive like laboratory like voice, you know. I mean, and that's not to say that everything is sunshine and rainbows and beautiful unicorns. Like it's not, right? Like it's really not. And it's okay to like have inside jokes with other departments or even to each other. I think where people feel, or maybe like my perception sometimes when I read these comments is that it's like just a lack of respect is how it comes across. Like the humor isn't humor because I don't feel respected by this class is the wrong word, but like group of people, right? And it's back to that old, you know, inclusion piece, right? It's like being the kid and not getting picked for kickball or something, you know? And I think that's it. Is that what you guys pick up too? Like there's just like this, we're excluded, and so it's a hard knock life kind of a thing, right?
I think that, but like I said, I think that's just where we are in our social media world right now. Like the meaner you are, the more sarcastic you are, or the more real, you know, quote unquote, real and raw you are with your comments, the more clicks you're going to get and the more people they're going to watch it and share it and all those things. Unfortunately, sometimes in our society, there's less room for kindness and acceptance and open comments. And where there is, it's just not viewed as much. But that's where we have to change the narrative. We all have allies, like we said before, nurses or radiologists or pharmacists that really respect our profession, really are in tuned and inquisitive and curious about what we do and really do want to help us be at the table. And so we have to lean into those relationships and really nurture those so we can create more of those and hopefully show a different picture. But then we also have to do what we're doing right now with our shifts and trends, just talk about these misconceptions, this miscommunication that's out there, and really help debunk some of these things for our patients.
Yeah, I second that. A big part of it too is that when you have an impersonal relationship or you have that limited experience, that it's easy to say that the lab doesn't care or that we have the Hemolyzer 3000 now and we're shaking all the tubes. But when you actually do like break down that wall and you build those relationships that you were talking about, it makes it a big deal. So I'm sure if Nurse Blake went into the lab and was brought in for a tour and explained about what was happening here, and then even on his side, if he brought some of the lab professionals up to nursing. So what we started doing at our hospital is called perfect pairs. So we actually are paired with a nursing unit. So we actually, during nurses, we brought them this big basket, and knew that what they wanted were snacks on the go. So we made sure we picked things that they could literally pick up, eat really quickly before they had to run to the next patient. And then for lab week, it was great. Our perfect pair actually bought pizza for our evening shift. So building those kind of relationships has been pretty helpful. And there's even a point system too. So when we had our table outside of the Starbucks, the one of the ladies is like, "Oh, is that your perfect pair? Are they trying to get pictures? Are they trying to get points? Are they going to win?" So that's something our hospital presence instilled in the culture, and that's made a huge difference. So even things like that, and we'll go up on the unit every now and then, like, I need a room for a student interview for my team won our little cell bowl, and just contacted our perfect pair. Their conference room was open. She made sure everything was set up for us, and then congratulated the students. I think she even high-fived quite a few of them. So it's those
Yeah.
relationships that you're talking about, Stephanie, that are very important.
I love that. Perfect pair. That's awesome. I've never heard of that before.
But it kind of goes back to what we talked about in episode 1, that leadership aspect, right? You really are building the culture, and your leadership supporting that, and all of your formal and informal leaders engaging and leaning into that perfect pair theme. You know, one thing I would say to Nurse Blake is understanding the departments that support you in doing what you are doing only makes you a better nurse. The best nurses in our hospital and in our healthcare system are the ones who understand the limitations of pharmacy and can explain why radiology may be taking so long, or understand why we need 2 green tops instead of 1 for this specific order type. And they can explain that to the patient, and the patient feels more relieved instead of blaming, because you're right there with the patient, and the patient's going to get upset and direct that just to you, anyways. And so I love that. In our health system, we just completed Healthcare Week. And if any other health systems out there are celebrating Healthcare Week, happy Healthcare Week. It used to be called Hospital Week, but I think they quickly saw that term Hospital Week excludes ambulatory people and the importance of people who are working out, in outpatient settings. And so now it's called Healthcare Week, and people love it because, Lab has our week, which we celebrate pretty broadly, and we go really deep. Like Erin, I know they go really deep in their lab week, and nurses have their week. But then, what about like medical records? And what about like facilities or housekeeping or EVS, environmental services? Those people who are also very important to the spoke in the wheel that keeps things turning. It really takes a moment to celebrate everybody who is moving healthcare along, no matter what your role is. And so
that's right. And within that comes this element, like the KCFD, like Station 10, they really use Nurses Week as a way to highlight advocacy for safety, right? The safety of everyone that works in healthcare. They targeted it like specifically at nurses for Nurses Week to bring awareness to that. And there were some really like harrowing stories of nurses who've experienced, even coworker death due to patients being violent. And the reason they were highlighting this is because in the Kansas City area, there was a young man who worked EMT, firefighter, and he responded to a call, and a patient actually stabbed him in the ambulance and killed him. This patient had a history of being a violent patient, and so they knew that a little bit, like on the call, but they just weren't expecting her to react in the way that she did given the situation. And so there was a lot of discussion about this. It was interesting for me because it was a lot of discussion from the lab side about this, which I thought was interesting. Is like, you were highlighting safety for nursing, but we're not highlighting safety for lab. And then there was a lot of conversation about, well, lab has a different career and we don't see patients as much. And then there was the folks of like, well, we do, right? Like, and so it kind of depends on where you are and where you intersect. But I really thought about this because even at our own site, we're talking about like, how do we promote safety for the staff that are patient facing, while still caring for patients the way that we should care for patients. And it is so challenging. I mean, I worked in the ED and like for a while, and that was just a lot, at times. And I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Like,
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate and very telling of the times that we live in, and many people need help and are not able to get the resources for that help that they need. And so, unfortunately, we are living in a time where even when you are in the most precious moments of trying to support or save a person's life, you still have to be protective of your own. I completely understand the laboratory's perspective because I know phlebotomists personally who have had instances with patients that have been dangerous or just disrespectful, like phlebotomists being spat on by patients and things like that, which that can be dangerous too because you don't know what respiratory viruses they have. Um, but I think, you know, if you're listening and there are all kinds of videos out there about just personal safety, right? Like, especially, if you're walking at night and what to do with your car keys, or where I follow this guy on social media who is an ex FBI agent. He's always dropping safety tips like never stay on the first floor of a hotel. And so, because there's that much information out there about your personal safety, I would encourage anyone listening, if you have a patient safety officer at your organization, or even if you don't, become that for your lab and raise different suggestions. Be very solution minded here. Raise different suggestions you have. If you are walking in your parking garage and you see an area that is a little bit too dim and could be more well lit, report that. Or if you see an area in the lab or an area in a hospital that you think could benefit from a camera, or a badge access somewhere, report that. Like, just be very aware, and patient and staff safety minded, and then report anything that you see that you think could be solutions, because that's what your leadership wants. They want the solutions. And if you're a frontline employee, or if you're out there walking around their hospital in your lab frequently, the solutions that you need, and what would help you feel safe.
Yeah, and at our hospital, they do have hospital forums that we do have with our hospital president, with the C-suite, where they are asking you if there are any safety concerns. Is there anything that you're seeing there? And I'm glad you brought up our phlebotomist too, because my day job is quality and safety compliance and education, but when we're going to like our freestanding ED labs, the phlebotomists are out front. When you're doing the audits, you look for that panic button that's there, that's if a patient passes out, but it's also there just in case there is someone that is a little more violent or unstable that they're having to actually do phlebotomy with. So it's something that you get used to seeing, but keeping track of the idea of the severity of it, or just the fact that the reason why we have it isn't just for that patient that might pass out when you look at your arm and like fall over, but there might be that violent patient that they have to be wary of.
Well, and it's unexpected too. And the thing is, there's a lot of talk of like, should we have federal regulation for this, for safety? Or like, what should the chain reaction be? Because the reality is we can't fight back. Right. I mean, personally, I've been kicked hard, like in the stomach before, in a patient interaction. I had someone break into my office before, and leave stuff on my desk, and I did security like sweep my office before, just to make sure like it wasn't anything like hurt us. And so like real things happen in healthcare. Like it gets kind of crazy, and you can't, it's like we don't talk about it enough. We also don't articulate probably it well, like that feeling. And then you can't fight back because you're supposed to be helping this person, right? And so at what point, though, is that something that really needs to kind of come out into the open, and we need to discuss like as a nation proper, maybe? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like some of these patients aren't cognizant of like where they are. So like you can't, can you like, it's kind of feels wrong to say like, well, we should prosecute these people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, It's such a weird scenario. And so
a moment of crisis. Yeah.
Right. And I commend the KCFD for like bringing light onto it. You know what I mean? And using Nurses Week as a way to partner to do that. Yeah, I think it's it's a good topic. It's just something we really need to dive into.
Yeah, I think we're doing the right thing now, but like opening the dialogue and making it something that is safe, and like, what do the kids say? Like, normalize the conversation, right? Like normalize the conversation that that this is something that we need ongoing training, perhaps protocols. Going back to episode 3, maybe some evidence-based protocols of what have worked in other clinical settings, some checklists, just like we do in other areas of the laboratory. But it's all going to come from, us normalizing things, encouraging reporting, and allowing people to, in a non-punitive way, speak their mind and be engaged in safety planning and improvement initiatives that will ultimately protect them and the patient.
That's right. Aaron's looking at the clock. You gonna sign us out, Aaron?
Is the floor calling us, Aaron?
The
floor is calling. That troponin needs a critical result here. So
don't get me started on criticals.
Yeah, no, we've had these critical conversations, and we've got the conversation started. So this is where you guys need to get involved and let us know what your thoughts are. We need to keep the conversation going, and whatever you can do, just bring more people into the laboratory, educate a little bit more, and take advantage of the other people on your team. So the ED nurses, the orthopedic, the cardio thoracic people, take advantage of your team. You're not in a silo. And oh gosh, okay, yeah, nurse is calling. Got that result out.
We'll say bye. We'll say bye. Although we could keep this conversation going forever. Stay tuned for more shifts and trends.
Yeah. Until then, peace.
Peace. Bye.
Shout out.